It started with a strange smell. I had just moved into a small rental house outside of Asheville. Not remote, but far enough from town that I could hear cicadas at night instead of traffic. It was a fixer-upper, sure. Cheap rent, because the owner lived out of state and didn't want to deal with renovations. He gave me a discount if I agreed to keep up with the yard and handle minor maintenance. No problem. I liked quiet. I liked solitude. But about 2 weeks in, I started to notice the smell. It wasn't strong, not at first, just this faint, sour odor that would creep in at night, especially if I kept the windows closed. I assumed it was mildew. Old house, older pipes, and I figured the crawl space underneath was probably swampy. So I bought a dehumidifier, ran it for a few nights. Nothing changed. Then, around the third week, things started to feel off. It wasn't just the smell, it was the noises. At first it was small stuff, little creaks at night that I chalked up to the house settling. Old houses do that. But the creaks became taps, like something lightly knocking beneath the floorboards. Not random either, there was a rhythm to it. A deliberate kind of knock, like tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. That was when I started checking the crawl space. There was a hatch door out back, low to the ground and rusted shut when I first moved in. I hadn't had a reason to open it before, but now I did. I waited until morning, no way I was going under there at night, and used WD-40 and a crowbar to finally crack the thing open. It groaned like a dying animal. A rush of stale, humid air hit me in the face, and that sour smell was much stronger here. I pulled out my flashlight and peered in. The crawl space was about 3 feet high, gravel floor, exposed beams, a few dangling insulation strips like hanging skin. But no animals, no rot, no source for the smell. I crawled in on my stomach and scanned every corner. Nothing, just dirt and cobwebs. I told myself it was in my head. Maybe I was stressed, work had been slow, I was spending too much time alone. A little paranoia wasn't unusual. Then the footsteps started. Not mine, not animal. I'm talking full human footsteps. They came from under the house. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. one night. No storm, no reason, just this gut-deep jolt of awareness that something was wrong. I laid still, listening. Then I heard it, a shuffle of gravel under my bed, then a step, and another. My breath caught in my throat. My bedroom was in the back corner of the house, above the crawl space. No vents down there, no reason sound would carry that clearly. I got out of bed, knees shaking, and turned on every light. I went outside barefoot and yanked open the crawl space hatch again. Nothing, just the smell. But the weirdest thing? The gravel directly under my bedroom window, it was disturbed, like someone had recently crawled through it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I called the landlord, asked if he had anyone doing work on the property. He said no. I asked if there'd ever been any issues with squatters or intruders. He hesitated, said a previous tenant claimed to hear someone under the house too. Cops came out, found nothing. The guy left after 6 months. That's when I bought the baby monitor, one of those Wi-Fi models with audio and motion alerts. I pointed the camera directly into the crawl space from the hatch opening. If anything moved down there, I'd know. I didn't expect it to catch anything, but it did. On the 4th night, it was 1:17 a.m. I woke up to my phone buzzing, motion detected. I opened the app and stared at the screen. There was a man. He was crawling on his elbows across the gravel, slow and steady toward the far corner. His clothes were ragged, soaked with dirt and God knows what else. His head was shaved. His skin looked pale and waxy in the infrared light, and he was barefoot. He stopped halfway through the frame, turned slowly toward the camera, and smiled. I screamed. Full body, involuntary scream. I don't even remember getting out of bed. I just remember running to my car, slamming the door and locking it as my hands fumbled to call 911. The cops came. They searched the crawl space and found nothing. Not a single trace. No footprints, no disturbed gravel, no sign that anyone had ever been there. They asked to see the footage. I pulled up the app. The feed was gone, just static. No saved alerts. No video history. They were polite but patronizing. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone had hacked the camera. But I know what I saw. I left that night, drove to a hotel, and never went back. A week later, I got a call from the landlord. He sounded shaken, said a new tenant had moved in. 3 days later, they called him in a panic. They'd found a small hidden door in the back of a bedroom closet, one that opened directly into the crawl space, one that wasn't on the original blueprints. Worse, they found a nest down there. Not an animal nest, a human one. Old blankets, empty water bottles, a knife, and dozens of Polaroids, all of different people sleeping. One of them was me. I used to work the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station off a rural highway in West Virginia. Middle of nowhere. We were the only stop for about 40 miles in either direction, and mostly just got long-haul truckers, the occasional lost tourist, or sketchy locals buying beer and scratch-offs. I liked the job fine. Quiet, solitary, boring, but peaceful. I'd read, listen to music, sweep the floors, refill coffee. Occasionally I'd talk with the truckers who came in around 3 or 4 a.m. There was this weird sense of camaraderie between night people. One night around 2 a.m., this guy walks in. Tall, gaunt, dressed head to toe in black, long coat, heavy boots, gloves, even though it was warm out. He moved like he was stiff or sore, and his head was always slightly tilted like he was listening for something far away. I said evening, like I always do. He didn't respond, just walked straight past the counter, past the snack aisles, and toward the back corner near the coolers. I watched him on the camera monitor. Here's what struck me. He wasn't looking at anything. Not the drinks, not the chips. Just walking slowly down each aisle, one by one, like he was pacing or inspecting the place. Eventually, I cleared my throat and said, "Let me know if you need anything." He turned and looked at me. No expression, just stared. And then he smiled, but it wasn't like a normal smile. It was all wrong. Too wide, too slow. Like someone who had seen smiles before, but never practiced one themselves. And I swear to God, he didn't blink once the entire time. I was already uncomfortable. Then he did something that's stuck with me ever since. He walked over to the slushy machine, picked up one of the small plastic cups, and filled it halfway with the red flavor. Then he walked over to the counter, placed the cup down, reached into his coat, and pulled out a single dollar bill. He slid it across the counter without a word. I rang him up. My hand brushed his when I handed him change, and his glove felt wet. He walked out slowly, slushy in hand, and got into a rusty, mud-covered van with no license plates. It sat there in the lot for another 45 minutes. Engine running, headlights off. I stayed behind the counter, pretending to check inventory, trying to look busy. The whole time, I kept expecting him to come back in, or worse, for someone else to get out of that van. But no one did. Eventually, it drove off. I let out the breath I'd apparently been holding for nearly an hour. I thought that was it. 2 nights later, I came in for my shift and noticed something odd. The red slushy flavor was completely empty, but the machine wasn't broken and the syrup barrel hadn't run out. Someone had drained the container and refilled it with water. That was weird. But maybe a prank? Maybe a kid earlier in the day? I brushed it off. I mean, people are strange. I've seen folks take bites out of bananas and leave the rest on shelves. It happens. But then things started escalating. One night I came in, and the coffee pots were shattered. Not knocked over, smashed, like someone had slammed them into the ground with force. But nothing else in the store was touched. The next night, all the restroom signs were torn off the doors. I checked the security footage and saw nothing. The footage just glitched during those hours, like someone had cut the feed and then stitched it back together sloppily. It wasn't a normal skip. You could see time markers jump, and sometimes a frame or two would freeze and repeat. My boss thought I was screwing with the equipment or covering for someone. I told him I wasn't. I even offered to pay for the coffee pots out of pocket. Then came the night I almost quit on the spot. It was just past 3 a.m. I was alone, no customers for the last hour. I was restocking the fridge near the back when I heard the door chime. I peeked around the aisle. It was him again, same coat, same gloves, same everything. But this time, he wasn't, pretending to shop. He was standing in the center of the store, staring directly at the counter where I usually stood, just motionless. I stayed hidden. I don't know why. Maybe instinct. I watched him from between the racks. After maybe 5 minutes, he walked over to the counter and placed something down. Then he turned and walked out. I didn't move for several more minutes. When I finally got the courage to walk up to the counter, my stomach dropped. It was a Polaroid. A photo of me, taken from behind the counter, clearly during a past shift. I was bent over the register, counting bills, and written in shaky black ink at the bottom of the photo were the words, "Don't stand there anymore." I called the cops, showed them the photo, showed them the broken machines. They took a report, said they'd keep an eye out, but that without a plate or name or video evidence, there wasn't much they could do. The next night, I refused to stand behind the counter. I brought a stool to the back storage room and watched the monitors from there. And sure enough, at 2:45 a.m., the van pulled in again. This time, it didn't even stop fully, just crept by, slow as death, with its headlights off. I handed in my notice the next morning. I don't know what that guy wanted. I don't know how he took that photo, or why the red slushy mattered, or why the video always failed when he came around. I never went back, never even drove past that gas station again. But sometimes late at night, I dream I'm standing behind that counter again, and I wake up to the sound of the door chime. I've been driving trucks for over a decade, cross-country routes mostly. There's a rhythm to it, long stretches of quiet, the hum of the engine, endless roads slicing through the dark. This happened about 3 years ago on a haul from Reno to Denver. I'd been driving since early afternoon, and around 2 a.m., I decided to pull into a rest stop off I-80 in the middle of Wyoming. It was one of those old-school stops, not the well-lit travel plazas with a dozen pumps and hot food. This was just a wide gravel lot, a couple of picnic tables, and a single cement building with bathrooms, no vending machines, no lights in the lot, just 2 flickering bulbs above the doors. I was the only one there. No other trucks, no cars, just the wind. I parked, killed the engine, and stepped out. The air was cold and still. You could hear the creak of my cab settling, the crunch of gravel under my boots. It was so quiet it felt like sound itself had been sucked out of the place. I went to the bathroom, splashed some water on my face, and stood outside for a minute to stretch. That's when I noticed the payphone on the side of the building. It shouldn't have stood out. Payphones are rare, but not extinct. Still, this one felt wrong. Something about it caught my attention. The handset was off the hook, dangling, gently swinging back and forth. There was no wind. I walked over, reached for the handset to hang it up, and stopped. The line wasn't swinging anymore. It was still, like someone on the other end had just picked up. I stared at it for a second, then hung it up slowly and backed away. That's when I heard a sound from across the lot, something like a footstep. I turned, scanning the dark. Nothing. I got back in my cab, locked the doors, and sat there for a minute. I don't scare easy, but something about that place made the hair on my arms stand up. I laid back in the sleeper and tried to relax. My eyes had just started to close when I heard it. A knock, not on the door, on the side panel, near the back of the trailer. I froze. Another knock. 3 in a row, deliberate, measured. I slid into the driver's seat and looked in my mirrors. Nothing. Then I heard it again, on the opposite side this time. Knock, knock, knock. I flicked on the cab lights and leaned forward, trying to see out into the dark. That's when I saw a figure, standing just at the edge of the lot. Too far to make out a face, but close enough to see the outline. Tall, thin, not moving, just watching. I started the engine. My headlights flooded the lot, and the figure was gone. Gone. No movement. No footsteps. Nothing. I pulled out fast. Didn't even check the GPS. I just wanted to be moving. About 15 miles down the road, I saw another rest area sign. This one was a newer site. Lights, vending machines, a couple trucks already parked. I pulled in and parked near the others. I left the engine running and got out to walk a lap and clear my head. As I passed the back of my trailer, I stopped. There were marks on the door. Faint, but there. Smudged handprints. Long ones. Not greasy or dirty like you'd expect, more like dusty, as if someone had wiped across the surface with the flat of their palm. I opened the back, heart racing. I wasn't hauling anything sensitive, just a load of insulation materials, but still, I had to check. Everything looked untouched. I closed it up and stood there under the overhead lot lights, suddenly feeling very, very tired. An older trucker nearby was smoking by his cab. He looked over and gave me a nod. I figured what the hell and walked over. Sometimes conversation helps kill the unease. We chatted about routes, the weather, nothing serious. Then I mentioned the other rest stop, how dead it felt, how weird the payphone was. He looked at me, real quiet-like, and said, "You mean the one past mile marker 2112?" I said, "Yeah." He flicked his cigarette and said, "That place ain't on any active maps anymore. Got shut down 5, maybe 6 years ago after a murder. Some local guy was camping out there, dragging people off the highway. They only caught him because a driver locked himself in his cab and called State Patrol. Took him hours to find the guy. He was living in a crawl space under the building." He paused. "But the creepy part? The last call ever made from that payphone was the victim calling 911. Dispatcher said all they heard was heavy breathing, then a whisper, 'He's still here.' Line went dead. They found the phone dangling just like you said." I stared at him, not sure if he was screwing with me. But then he added, "You're not the first driver to mention weird things at that stop. Some say it's just nerves. But I say, don't ignore your instincts out here. You're alone more than you think." I didn't sleep that night. I drove straight through to Denver and put in a request with dispatch to avoid that stretch of I-80 whenever possible. I didn't tell them why. Some things you keep to yourself. But I'll tell you this. I've been through deserts, snowstorms, cities at 3 a.m., and sketchy truck stops across the country. Nothing ever got under my skin like that silent rest stop, the knock on my trailer, and the man I never quite saw.